Water is a necessity. We all need water on a daily basis. Collecting water can be a problem. The Chigezi Water Project is about providing a supply of clean water to people in poorer, remote farming areas. The project helps the people in a practical way with the care and concern for which they thirst. The Chigezi Water Project is a Christian project run by the Anglican Church in Chigezi with the help of Tearfund, an international aid organization. Chigezi is a region in southwest Uganda. This program is about the area around Kabale in southern Chigezi. The Chigezi Water Project and Tearfund aim to work in partnership to bring help and hope to communities in need. The main purpose of this project is to help the poorer, more isolated communities of the Kabale area. Neil Salway is an engineer who is working for the Chigezi Water Project and has an assistant, Kenneth Bekunda. Kenneth Bekunda's job is to teach and encourage people in the project area to improve their health, hygiene, and toilets at the same time that their water supply is being upgraded. Around Kabale, there are 4 possible sources of water. Lake Bunyonyi, 300 feet above Kabale, the rivers and springs, largely at the bottom of the hillside, and direct rainfall. Springs are used by many communities because they are closer than other sources. The springs feed muddy pools that animals also use. The pools are easily contaminated by dirty and disease-carrying water running off the hillside, especially at the beginning of the rainy season. Ken's job is to educate people to protect themselves from illness and disease.
We expect them at least to come when we call them for health and sanitation sessions. The community here is supposed to come when we agree with them on a date. And then we come and teach them how to care for their source, the protected spring. They have to keep it fenced. They have to keep animals away from it. They don't have to wash from there. And then we teach them when they come, they should wash their containers first before they put water in them. And they should wash their hands always before they fetch the water. And their containers should always be covered, because you may put in a clean water and leave it uncovered, and then it gets contaminated. And then this being a huge site and having these trees overgrown around, I'm not ashamed of saying that people here defecate in the fields. So we teach them not to defecate in the fields. Otherwise, when it rains, all the feces will drain here. They will be brought by the storm water. Then it will contaminate their source.
Getting the water to farms and families is a problem. Firstly, the landscape is difficult with marshy areas in the valley floors and steep valley sides to climb. Secondly, there are few roads. For many families, water is obtained from springs on the valley floor and then carried on footpaths, up steep valley sides, covering miles in a round trip. Carrying the water up hillsides is an arduous and time-consuming task. The paths may become very muddy and slippery in the rain seasons. This is one of the main reasons why homes gradually dwindle in number and quality the farther one goes up the hill. The third problem is the lack of wealth. For storage tanks, pipes and taps are expensive for families in this area. Just about all the land around Kabale has been cleared of forest, and the land is used for family subsistence farming. Here in the Chigezi Hills, rainfall is sufficient to allow crop farming for much of the year. The temperature is cooler, especially during the rainy seasons. Nights can be cold. There are 5 main options available for water supply. Piped water from Lake Bunyonyi, which would be expensive to provide. Water from the rivers, which is unclean and would be expensive to pump to areas away from the rivers. Springs. These are usually communal, muddy and contaminated with many sources of illness. However, the springs can be protected at very low cost. Most springs are found near the foot of valley sides. For springs found higher on the valley sides, gravity water schemes of low cost can be provided. Rainwater harvesting is the final option and is a low-cost way for providing water. The lake and the river water options are expensive. The Chigezi Water Project is aimed at the poorer farmers and villages in more remote areas. The project concentrates on the 3 cheaper options for water supply: spring protection, small-scale gravity flow water, and rainwater harvesting.
Well, today we are going to look at some springs, unprotected sources, to see what we can do with them. Sometimes it is necessary to look at these sources first before we can make a decision as to how we can protect them. Sometimes sources are very low down, they're in the swampy areas, and it is difficult to just protect them conventionally. So we may need to have a pump to lift water out of the swamp.
To provide clean water, the spring needs covering with a concrete tank with a pipe outlet. Cleaning water runs from the pipe, which is raised, to let people put their container below in order to collect the water. The villagers are prompted to approach the water project office in Kabale to ask for help to provide clean water. In this case, the local priest is talking to villagers about a spring protection scheme. The priest is helped by Ken Bekunda.
He was asking me what is required of the community here so that we can protect this source. So I was telling him all the unskilled labor has to come from the community here. All the hardcore, which will be needed, the aggregate, the sand, and the clay.
So the local people provide the cost of local materials such as sand, gravel, and clay. They also provide the bulk of the unskilled labor, as well as giving board and lodging to the craftsmen. The craftsman, supervision of the job, and expert advice are provided by the Chigezi Water Project. Where sufficient funds are available, then a hand pump might be fitted. Rainwater harvesting is often provided for an individual family or a group in a compound. This scheme is especially helpful to those places higher up the hillside. Rainwater harvesting uses metal gutters around buildings to collect rainwater from a galvanized metal roof. The rainwater is led into large pottery jars on the side of the building. For larger compounds, such as this primary school, concrete tanks are used to collect the water. A metal tap on the base of the jar or tank is used to obtain water. On the tanks, the taps are often padlocked. The jars are less costly than the tanks. Sieves are placed over the jars to catch rubbish washed away from the roof. Rainwater harvesting does not give a constant assured supply of water because the rainfall of the area is seasonal and unreliable.
So by having these rainwater tanks, especially during the first few weeks of the onset of the rainy season, the number of deaths can be drastically reduced. And also, when you think of people having to carry heavy jerry cans uphill on very wet, slippery surfaces, it's very dangerous for them. And so it also is beneficial in that way.
A gravity flow water scheme needs a spring higher up the valley side so that water will naturally flow down the pipes. Usually a larger, more reliable flow is chosen. The springs are enclosed and protected, then the water is fed by pipe to tanks and taps further down the hill. A gravity flow water scheme needs a long length of pipe and a final storage tank, as they are generally supplied to larger concentrated groups of people, such as secondary schools and government offices. Often there are a number of taps along the pipe for farmers to collect their water. A gravity flow scheme is expensive to build and maintain. There are few gravity flow schemes in the poor farming areas. Many farmers object to having to pay for water from the taps on the pipes. The farmers claim that the water is in common ownership and therefore the water is free. The Chigezi Water Project aims to help poor communities in more remote areas to provide themselves with clean water supplies to to improve their health and standard of living. The Chigezi Water Project supports 3 options: spring protection, rainwater harvesting, and gravity flow water schemes. Do you think the objectives for the project are worthwhile? Does the project meet those objectives?